The Heart's Uncharted Territory, Chronicles of the White Valley, Part 3. This is a Moondragon original production. All rights are reserved. The exile of Caleb Hodge and his followers left a silence in the valley that was both a relief and a wound. The air, once thick with the poison of greed and suspicion, slowly cleared. But the memory of violence, of Jeb's terrible shot, of Chaitin's lifeless body, lay over the community like a shroud. A palpable grief emanating from Chief Stone's village, that mirrored the settlers' own shame and sorrow. Work continued. It had to. The planting of the second year's crops, the strengthening of cabins, the tending of a few precious livestock, these were the rhythms that held the despair at bay. But the easy, tentative camaraderie that had begun to blossom before the discovery of gold was gone, replaced by a careful, cautious distance. The two communities were like planets held in a stable but distant orbit by the gravity of their leaders' respect, but afraid to drift closer lest they collide again. Amidst the tension, a different kind of gravity was pulling at two hearts. Annie Petrova moved through her days with a quiet, relentless purpose. The loss of her daughter, Kasnia, during the first winter had hollowed her out, but she had filled the emptiness with a profound knowledge of the land's healing gifts. She was no longer just a settlement's healer, she was its bridge to the earth itself. Her hands, though stained with soil and herb, were never still. She spent her days in the meadows and forests that bordered the native lands, her keen eyes searching for precious herbs, yarrow, and the tender spring shoots of cow parsnip. One morning, venturing further than usual in a search of a rare moss that Grimrock had told her could ease deep muscle pain, she heard a low groan of agony from a thicket of willow near the river. Her healer's instincts overrode her normal cautious state, and she pushed through the branches. There, a young man was curled on the ground, his face ashen and beaded with sweat. He was Makan, Chief Stone's younger brother. She knew him by sight, a quiet, serious man in his mid-30s, often seen hunting at the edge of the valley. His left leg was caught in the vicious iron jaws of a whole-leg trap. It was an old, rusted thing, left behind by a trapper years before. Its teeth sunk deep into his calf, staining the torn leather of his leggings with a dark, ugly red. His eyes, dark with pain and fury, snapped open as she approached. He flinched, trying to reach for the knife in his belt, a growl forming in his throat. He saw a pale-faced woman, and the recent history screamed in his head. Anya stopped immediately, her hands rising slowly to show that she held no weapon. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice, when she spoke, was a calm and low thing, the voice that she had used for frightened children and injured animals. "Be still," she murmured, though she knew he likely understood very little English. She made a gentle pressing down motion with her hand. "You will hurt yourself more. Let me help," she said. She approached him not as a settler, not as a stranger, but as a healer. She knelt in the damp earth and focused entirely on the wound. She ignored the dirt, the blood, and the danger of his proximity. She saw only the injury. For her, that was all that mattered. From her pouch she withdrew a small waterskin and a strip of clean linen. With careful, deliberate movements, she began to clean the blood from around the trap's jaws, assessing the damage. Makan watched her, his body tense, his breathing coming in ragged gasps. The suspicion in his eyes slowly gave way to a pained confusion. He expected fear, hostility, or worse. He did not expect this quiet, focused compassion. He saw no greed in her eyes, but only a deep, unwavering concentration. He had seen that same look in the eyes of his people's own healers. Anya knew she couldn't free him alone. The trap's spring was too powerful. She needed leverage. She looked around, her gaze settling on a thick, fallen branch. She pointed to it, then to the trap, and mimicked a prying, open motion. Understanding flickered in his eyes. He gave a tight, pained nod. It took all of her strength. Grunting in effort, she wedged the branch between the rusted jaws and leaned her entire weight upon it. The metal screamed in protest, but slowly, agonizingly, it began to open. Makan gritted his teeth. Seizing the moment, he pulled his mangled leg free with a cry that tore from the depths of his soul. He collapsed backwards, breathing heavily. Anya immediately dropped the branch and fell to her knees beside him again. The wound was bad. The flesh was torn and already beginning to swell. Infection was a death sentence. She worked quickly. From her pouch, she took a handful of dried, crushed yarrow leaves and pressed it hard against the wound to staunch the bleeding. He gasped at the pressure but did not pull away. Then she took a small clay jar of honey, precious and golden, and fiercely antiseptic, and smeared it thickly over the torn flesh. Finally, she bound it all tightly in linen strips, her movements efficient and sure. When she was done, she sat back on her heels, her own hands now smeared with his blood. She looked at his face. The pain was still there, etched deep, but the fury was gone, replaced by something else. Awe, perhaps. He spoke then, his voice rough with pain. Pilamaya. It was a word that she knew. Grimrock had taught her a few, and she nodded, offering a small, tired smile. You are welcome, she said. Their eyes met and held. In that silence, in the sun-dabbled thicket, the politics of the valley, the recent bloodshed, the weight of their different worlds, it all fell away. There were only two people, a man in pain and the woman who had eased it. He could not walk, and she was not strong enough to support him on her own. She knew what she had to do, but it was a risk that could shatter the fragile peace all over again. I must get help, she said, pointing back towards the settlement. I will bring someone, a friend. You understand? Wait here. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded once, showing that trust had developed from this ordeal. Anya ran. She did not go to the main settlement. She went straight to Grimrock's cabin. He was the only one who would understand, the only one who would be able to navigate this delicate path ahead. Rock listened to her rushed explanation, his old, keen eyes missing nothing, the blood on her hands, the fear and determination on her face. He asked no foolish questions. He simply grabbed his rifle and a medical pouch more extensive than hers. Show me, he grunted. They returned to the ticket. Makan was there, where she had left him. His eyes had been closed, but he opened them at the sound of their approach. He tensed slightly at the sight of Rock, but a quiet word from the old trapper, in a mixture of English and Lakota, calmed him. Together, Rock and Anya fashioned a crude travois of branches and hide. They carried Makan not to the settlers' camp, but to a secluded spot that Rock knew near the hot springs that steamed at the valley's northern edge. It was a neutral place that was sacred to Chief Stone's people. For the next week, Anya visited him there every day. Under Rock's watchful, silent presence, she tended to Makan's wounds, changing the dressing, applying new poultices of crushed corn flour and willow bark tea for the pain. Rock acted as an interpreter, his gruff voice facilitating a stumbling, simple conversation. She asks if the pain is less today. Rock translated. Tell her the fire in my leg is now only embers, said Makan. Rock, said Anya. He says your medicine is now strong, stronger than the pain. Slowly, haltingly, they began to talk without Rock's direct translation. They pointed at things a bird, a cloud, a plant. She would say the word in English, and he would say it in his people's language. And slowly, they built their own language. Anya learned that Makan, like her, had lost a partner, his wife who had died in childbirth several winters before, and their child who had passed a few days after. The shared shadow of loss was a territory they both understood without words. He was a hunter, renowned for his patience and silence. His people loved him fiercely, but he was a quiet man that was often alone. And he saw in Anya a strength that mirrored his own, a deep connection to the land that went beyond words. He watched her work, her hands gentle yet capable, her focus absolute. He saw the intelligence in her eyes, the kindness that had driven her to help a man who, by all recent rights, would have been her enemy. He saw her beauty, not in the pale, fragile way of other settler women, but in a way that the roofer is beautiful, life giving, steady, and strong. For Anya, Makan was unlike any man she had ever known. The settlers, even the good looking men like Thomas and Cooper, were still men of the East, trying to impose their will on the land. But Makan was of the land. He moved through it not as a conqueror, but as part of it. His silence was not emptiness, but a deep well of observation and understanding. His strength was not for show, it was a simple, inherent fact, like the strength of the mountains. In his dark, watchful eyes, she saw a reflection of a world that she had only just begun to comprehend, and she felt the pull, as undeniable as the tide. The day came when Makan could stand. Testing his weight on his injured leg, he took a step, and then another. He looked at Anya, and slowly, a triumphant smile spread across his face. It was the first true smile she had ever seen from him. It transformed his face, lighting up his serious features with a warmth that made her breath catch. He was healed, and he had to return to his people. The parting was heavy with unspoken words. They stood by the hot springs, the steam curling around them like a veil. Hugo, said Anya softly, her heart aching with the loss she hadn't expected to feel so keenly. Makan looked at her, his dark eyes serious. He reached out, and with a touch as gentle as a butterfly's wings, he brushed a stray strand of hair from her cheek. It was an astonishingly intimate gesture, one that spoke volumes in its simplicity. Anya, he said, her name sounding like a prayer on his lips. It was the first time he had spoken it. Then he turned, and without a backward glance, melted into the forest, leaving her standing there, her skin tingling where he had touched her, her world irrevocably tilting on its axis. News of Makan's return spread quickly through Chief Stone's village, and with it the story of the settler healer who had saved him. It was met with a complex mixture of gratitude and deep unease. Gratitude for the life of Chief Stone's brother, and unease that a death had occurred, and at the closeness it implied. The settlers too heard the story from Grimrock, who told it plainly to Cooper and the council. It was met with a similar weary silence. Anya's act, though brave and good, had somehow trespassed an invisible, unspoken line. A week passed. Anya tried to throw herself back into her work, but the world seemed muted, colorless. She found herself looking towards the tree lane, hoping for a glimpse of a figure that never appeared. Then, one evening, as she was alone in her herb garden, behind her small cabin, a shadow fell across the plot. She looked up, her heart leaping into her throat. Makan stood there. He was not alone. Beside him was a young girl from her village, her eyes wide with nervous excitement. In his arms he held a beautiful tanned elk hide, its surface soft as velvet, and in his hands a small expertly woven basket filled with the most potent, rare medical roots and herbs she had ever seen, offerings of immense value and significance. He had not come to the settlement, he had come to her, publicly, openly. He laid the gifts at her feet, then spoke in Lakota to the young girl, who translated in halting, practiced English that Rock must have taught her. Makan, brother of Chief Stone, offers these gifts. He says the debt of life is great. He offers these tokens of the girl struggled for the word of respect and of friendship, but his eyes, locked on Anya's, spoke a different, more powerful language. They spoke of admiration, of longing, of a courage that matched her own. Anya felt the eyes of the entire settlement upon her. She saw Thomas Rivers pause his hammering. She saw Eleanor Vance peering from her window. She knew the risk that he was taking. He was publicly honoring her, forcing both of their peoples to acknowledge this connection. With a grace she didn't know she possessed, she accepted the gifts. Please tell him, she said to the girl, her voice clear and steady, that I accept his gifts with gratitude. The greatest gift from this was his life being saved. There is no debt, only friendship. But the word felt inadequate on her tongue, yet it was the only one that she could use safely. This public exchange became the talk of both communities. For the settlers, it was a strange and fascinating spectacle. For Chiefstone's people, it was the subject of immense discussion. Some saw it as brave, as a way of balancing the scales. Others, particularly a fierce warrior named Bull, who had coveted Makan's status and secretly desired a connection to his family, saw it as a dangerous contamination. Bull began to murmur that Makan was being bewitched by the pale-faced medicine woman with her magic that had clouded his mind after she had saved him. Undeterred by the whispers, Makan began to visit the edge of the settlement regularly. He never came empty-handed. Sometimes it was with meat, a haunch of venison left for the common stores. Sometimes it was with a skill, showing Thomas Rivers a better way to set a lock foundation so that it would withstand the harshest of winters, or demonstrating a powerful fishing technique to the settlers at the river. His pretext was always practical, a sharing of knowledge, but his path always inevitably led him to Anya's cabin. Their exchanges were brief, watched by dozens of eyes, but in those moments, a world of meaning passed between them in a glance, a touch of hands as he passed her a bundle of herbs, and a soft spoken word. The tension within Anya was a living thing. She was drawn to him with a power that terrified and exhilarated her. She would lay awake at night, remembering the feel of his hands on her cheek, the depth in his eyes. But she was also afraid of the disapproval of her people, of causing another rift, afraid of the vast, seemingly unbridged gap between their worlds. One afternoon he found her collecting river cane for weaving baskets. They were relatively alone, out of the direct sight of the camp. "You are sad," he stated. It wasn't a question. He had learned to read the nuances in her expression. Anya looked away, her fingers tracing the smooth grain of the cane. "It is difficult," she whispered. He was silent for a moment. Then he said in his careful, broken English, "The hawk and the wolf. They are different, yes?" She looked at him, puzzled. "Yes," she responded. "The valley is for both. The sky for the hawk, the earth for the wolf. Different, but the same valley." He placed his hand over his heart. Same heart. The simplicity and profound truth in his words shattered her resistance. He wasn't asking her to become like him, or he like her. He was saying that their differences did not have to be a wall, they could be a bridge. The valley was big enough for both the hawk and the wolf. Was it big enough for their love? Tears welled in her eyes. He reached out, his thumb gently catching a tear as it traced down her cheek. This time, his touch was not a fleeting brush. It was a claim. Do not be sad, Anya, he murmured. Be strong, like the river, like your medicine. From that day on, they stopped hiding. Their love became the worst kept and most closely watched secret of the valley. They were often seen walking together at the forest's edge. They were a living, breathing symbol of the peace that they had all fought for, a testament to its most beautiful possibility. But a symbol to some is a threat to others. Bull's jealousy festered. He saw Makan's influence growing, his bravery being praised, his connection to the settlers making him indispensable to Chief Stone. He began to spread darker rumors, suggesting that Anya's medicine was a trick, that she had ensnared Makan to learn the secrets of his people, to make them vulnerable. The storm broke at a shared gathering, the first since the gold crisis, a feast to celebrate the summer solstice. Chief Stone and a group of his people came to the settlement, bringing deer and baskets of berries. The atmosphere was strained but civil. There was music from a harmonica someone had salvaged, and the settlers attempted to dance a reel, much to the quiet amusement of their guests. Anya and Makan sat slightly apart from both groups, a space of their own making. They did not touch, but the connection between them was a tangible force. They smiled at each other, a private, shared joy in a public space. Bull watched them. His face was a thundercloud. He had drunk too much of the fermented berry drink the settlers had offered, liquid courage fueling his resentment. He stood up suddenly, his voice loud and slurred, drawing all eyes. He pointed a shaking finger at Makan and began to shout in Lakota, his words rapid and furious. The festive atmosphere died instantly. The settlers looked on in confused alarm. The faces of Chief Stone's people grew still and tense. Makan rose slowly to his feet, his own expression turning cold. Rock, who was sitting with Cooper, translated in a low, urgent whisper. He's calling him a traitor to his blood. He says that he is lying with the enemy. He says that the pale-faced witch has stolen his spirit and will steal the soul of his people next. Anya, though she didn't understand the words, understood the hatred in Bull's eyes. She shrank back, fear clutching her heart. Makan did not shout back. He spoke quietly, but his voice carried a deadly chill. He was defending her, defending his choice. Bull spat on the ground between them, a universal sign of contempt. Then he made his fatal mistake. He took a step forward towards Anya, his hands going to the knife at his belt. It was as far as he got. In a blur of motion, McCann closed the distance between them. There was no knife drawn, no fist thrown. It was a display of pure, controlled power. He caught Bull's wrist before the knife could clear its sheath, twisting it with a sharp, precise motion, and used the man's own momentum to throw him heavily to the ground. He stood over him, pinning him with a foot on his chest, his own knife now in his hand, its point resting lightly at Bull's throat. The entire clearing was frozen. Makan, his chest was heaving, but his hands were steady. He looked down at the man beneath him. His eyes blazed with a protective fury. Then he looked up, his gaze sweeping over his people and finally landing on Chief Stone. He spoke a single, clear sentence in Lakota. Rock translated in a hush whisper. He says, "She is under my protection. She is my heart. Whoever threatens her threatens me, and I will break them." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a declaration, not just of love, but of permanent, unbreakable alliance. He had publicly chosen her, above the approval of his tribe, above tradition, above everything. Chief Stone stood, his face now unreadable. He looked from his brother standing, fierce and defiant, over his rival, to Anya, who was pale but had risen to her own feet, her chin held high, in a show of courage that matched that of Macan's. He looked at the terrified settlers and his own shamed people. He walked forward until he stood before Macan. For a long, tense moment, no one breathed. Then Chief Stone placed his hand on Macan's shoulder. He spoke, and his voice held the full weight of his chiefsmanship. "My brother has spoken," Rock translated, a note of awe filling his gruff voice. "His heart is his own, his choice is his own. The woman Anya Petrova saved his life. She has brought no harm, only healing. She is welcomed in this valley, as he is welcome. This conflict is over." He looked down at Bull, his expression stern. "You have brought shame on yourself with your drunken words. You will apologize, and you will never speak of this again." The crisis had passed. The line had been drawn, not in sand, but in the very heart of the community, and it had been ratified by its highest authority. Later that night, under a canopy of a million brilliant stars, Makan found Anya by the river. The sounds of the tense feast had faded away, replaced by the gentle rush of water. He didn't speak. He simply opened his arms. She walked into them without hesitation, burying her face into the soft leather of his shirt, breathing in his scent of wood smoke and sage. He held her tightly, as if he would never let go. "I was so afraid," she whispered against his chest. "I am not afraid," he said into her ear, his voice a low rumble. "My heart is that of a warrior who has found his fight because it has found you." He pulled back slightly, cupping her face in his hands. His thumb stroked her cheek. "Your people, my people, they are—" He searched for the words. "The river banks. We—" He brought her hand to his chest, then placed his own over her hand. "We are the river." And under the vast starlit sky in the valley that had tested them both, saved them, and nearly broken them, he kissed her. It was not a tentative kiss of exploration, but a seal, a promise, a merging of two worlds into one, singular and unstoppable flow. It was a kiss that held the memory of loss, the ache of loneliness, the terror of prejudice, and the triumph, courageous joy of love that dared to cross every frontier to find its home. Have you ever found yourself in a similar position? And do you think you'd be brave enough to fight for love against all odds and against every expectation? Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed this story so that you don't miss any new adventures. And drop us a comment below to let us know where you are viewing from. As always, your support means the world to us, and we hope to see you in the next one.